In this video, I'm going to show you how to crochet an easy round rug, and what's more, you can do it for free. All you're going to need is your yarn and your hook, and away you go. It's using easy stitches and anyone could tackle this rug, and to make it free you can make your own t-shirt yarn. I'm Christine of Christine's Crafts, and this channel is dedicated to crafting on a budget. So what am I talking about? Well, as you can see, I'm using t-shirt yarn that I made completely out of our old t-shirts, so it costs absolutely nothing. If you want to know how to make yours, stay until the end and you'll get access to the video that will show you, or go to the link below this video. You don't have to use t-shirt yarn. You could use some really thick chunky yarn, but obviously that's going to cost you some money. And another option is to use fabric yarn that you've made out of old sheets or some fabric that you've got, just like this here. Again, you can see how to do that by looking at my video, and there's a link below. So what you're then going to need is a crochet hook. Now, I recommend a 10mm hook. You may use one that's a bit larger, just to fit the size of your stitches. And I do recommend one with an ergonomic handle, because you're going to be doing a lot of crocheting and it's going to get quite heavy, your rug. So it'll just help avoid hurting your wrist. I'm also going to say that you're going to need to keep a record of which round you're on as you're working. Now, this is the obvious easy way of doing it. Get a pen and a piece of paper and just work out where you're up to and keep a note. But you may want to use some sort of row marker. You can get nice little digital ones that go on your finger. And as you can see, I've got an old-fashioned one that goes on your knitting needle. Doesn't matter that I haven't got a knitting needle, I just put it on the side beside me. And just make sure you do mark each round as you go. So let's start with our yarn. I'm going to use one that I haven't got a lot of because I don't need so much to do the centre. Form a loop. And make sure your loop has got a bit that's got 2 lengths of yarn on it. Okay, so it's double like that. And we're going to form a magic ring. So the first thing you're going to do is hook your yarn through the loop and then wrap your yarn around the hook, pull it through, and you've formed a chain. And now we're going to start with our stitches. So take your hook, feed it through the circle and hook your yarn and bring it back through, and then wrap the yarn around the hook and pull that through both loops that are on the crochet hook, and what you've formed is a single crochet. Now notice that these are in US terms, okay? So let's go through the circle and hook the yarn again, wrap the yarn round, pull it through the 2 loops, and you've now formed 2 single crochets. Now you're going to form 6 onto this circle. So take your hook through, pull the yarn, wrap it round, and then pull it through both loops. So as I say, you're going to form 6. Now, whether you want it in US terms or UK terms, if you go below this video, you'll find a link to my website where you can access this pattern written down for free. So do feel free to go and have a look there, but I'll be continuing with US terms all the way through this video. So once we've got all 6, that's the basis for our rug. So you can see you've got 6 on there. And then we're going to make this into an actual ring. So mark the first stitch that you did. And it's really important that you do that and you keep doing that, because that's going to help you to get a nice tidy rug. So mark that first stitch with a stitch marker, a safety pin, or whatever you've got. And then pull the start of this yarn, and it will pull your loop and make it smaller and smaller and smaller, so that you're going to form what we call a magic ring. Okay. So you can see you've formed a ring, and we're now going to be able to work into that first stitch. So put your hook into the first stitch. Make sure you're using the right length of yarn. Pull it through and pull it through the other loop. And all you've done is a little slip stitch that is just going to link it up to make the loop. Now I'm taking a stitch marker out to work. Now in that first stitch, we're going to do an increase. And all it means is that you do 2 single crochets. So put the hook in, pull the yarn through, wrap it round and pull it through both loops. And then remember to put your stitch marker back in the first stitch that you did. So I've just done 2 single crochets into 1 stitch, and that's what we call an increase. Now obviously we're doing an increase single crochet, but it would work with any other stitches. Once you've mastered this single crochet, it's the main stitch for the whole thing, so you really are off and running. So now you're just going to move to the next stitch and do 2 single crochet again. See, I'm just having a little bit of trouble wrapping my yarn round. Don't worry if you do, you just persevere, and what happens is it gets easier and easier, and by the time you finish this rug you'll be doing them without even thinking about it. Again, the next stitch, 2 single crochets in it. So you're going to do an increase into every single of your 6 stitches from the previous round. Okay. You can see I've got a bit of yarn I'm not happy with there, and I'm just cutting some off because it's yarn I made. It's not necessarily perfect, especially because it's from t-shirts and you get seams and things in them. So once you finish this round, you're going to end up with 12 stitches in your round because you put 2 into every single one. I wouldn't worry too much about the maths and the numbers. All that really matters after each round is that your circle lies flat and is starting to form your rug. And that's it. We're round to the beginning again. Make sure you mark how many rows you've done. So we're back to the first stitch. So what we're going to do in this round is slightly different, and you're going to start to see the pattern of how this rug develops. Okay, so I'm just taking my stitch marker out. At least I would be if I could manage, just wrestling it out. Now in that first stitch, I'm going to do an increase again. So get my hook through, yarn back to the loops. So I've got 2 single crochets into that first stitch. You can see it's a little bit tight. And then in the next stitch, I'm just going to do 1 single crochet. And then in the next stitch, I'm going to do 2 single crochets. And then in the next stitch, 1 single crochet. So in this round, what I'm doing is alternating between an increase and an ordinary single crochet. Now you'll realise I forgot to mark first stitch. You try and avoid that. Try and make sure you move your stitch marker on as soon as you've done that first stitch, or those first 2 stitches, because it's always an increase. So work your way round, carrying on with 1 increase, 1 ordinary single crochet, 1 increase, 1 ordinary single crochet, until you get round to your stitch marker again. And that's another round complete. Check it still lies flat. Starting to look like a tiny rug. So the next round, we're going to start with an increase, which we do every single round. So into that first stitch, we're going to do 2 single crochets. But on this round, and look, I've remembered this time to mark my stitch. We're going to single crochet into the next 2 stitches. And then another increase. Okay, so that's your increase. And then it's 2 single crochets. So what you're doing this time is an increase, 2 single crochets, and repeat. An increase, 2 single crochets, and just keep repeating that all the way around. Now you'll notice in the last round we did 1 increase, 1 single crochet. In this round we're doing 1 increase, 2 single crochets. So what you're doing all the time is adding 6 to the round. So every time you go round, there are 6 more stitches involved. And that's the basic pattern we're going to keep working on all the way through this rug. So in your next round, you're going to have an increase and then 3 single crochets. And then after that, you're going to have an increase, then 4 single crochets. And you can see how the pattern is building up. Now, as I say, if you're a little unclear at all, go to my website from the links below and you'll be able to see this written down. So you've got both options, written and video, to help you. So we've got to the end of that round. We've marked that we've got to the end of that round. And then on this round, start with an increase. Don't worry, I'm not going to show you every single round of my rug. I'm just making sure that you've got the idea. Okay, so we've got an increase. Mark your first stitch. Especially if you're new to crocheting, it can be really difficult to find that stitch if you forget to mark it. So now we're going to single crochet once, twice, 3 times, and then an increase. And that's how you're going to keep going. Every single row or round, you're going to increase the number of single crochets between your increases. And that's the basic pattern of your rug, and you just keep going. But you do need to keep lying it down flat every at least 2 to 3 rows or rounds, and make sure that it's lying flat, because you can get problems of it curling up like a bowl or rippling, and this can be if you've too many or too few stitches. Now that can be an issue if you're swapping between different yarns. Like I've got t-shirt yarn, they're not all exactly the same, so you can get that problem. Now if you do, just nip to the website and it will show you how to deal with it, because you just need to increase more or increase less just to get the right number of stitches. Now as you can see, mine's grown quite a bit now, and I just want to show you changing from one yarn to another. So I'm going to this nice blue. It's another t-shirt yarn with a bit of stretch in it. I do recommend, if you're changing colours particularly, to do it at the start of a round. So I'm into that first stitch and I'm going to do an increase. So all you do is take your new yarn, leaving a good length off it, ready for tidying up at the end, and just use that instead of the yarn you were using. So I'm going to do 2 single crochets because it's my increase. Mark that first stitch. It can be very important to mark that first stitch, because you're going to think it's the new colour, in my case blue, and it's not, it's burgundy, because it's still the last bit of yarn being pulled through and used. So just make sure you mark that first stitch. And then you just carry on as you were before. So I'm going to do all my single crochets and then do my increase. So you just work your way around. Now it's really important that we fasten that new yarn in to the old yarn so that neither of them can pull through. Now you could do it straight away, or you can do your whole round and then do it, which is what I've chosen to do here. It doesn't matter, you're not going to pull it through just while you're working now. But I was hoping to show you this round so you can see how it's building on the colour before and the effect that you get. So just keep working your way along. You can see I'm having a bit of trouble with the yarn. And I'd say when you change colour or yarn, it's really important that at the end of your round, you do lie it flat and make sure it's lying okay. Because that's a key time that it's likely to start curling or rippling because your yarn's not necessarily the same size. Obviously, if you're using bought yarn, you'll know it's the same size. So when you get right back round to the start, back to that first stitch, we're going to deal with the ends to make sure that they don't come undone. Lots of different ways people do this. Now, personally, I just tie the two together, and I just do it in a simple reef knot or something similar. So I just take the two ends that I've got and just form a little reef knot. And that'll just keep them tight. And we'll weave those ends in later. So just leave them dangling from the rug. And then you just carry on with your pattern, however you were before. And you'll see it start to build up. So I'm just showing you that that's been absolutely fine. And that you must remember to keep marking which round you're on, just so you know how many stitches you need between your increases. Keep an eye on your ball of wool or yarn, and when you've not got enough to do another one, that's the time to go again. You can see I've not really got enough, or I could try it, maybe I have. And then it's time to change again. So exactly the same as last time. Just on that first stitch, and you'll see I've made sure I'm on the first stitch again. Just hook it through and form that first single crochet. And it's an increase, so I'm going to do another one. Mark that first stitch. And then off you go again. Now if you want, you can tie those before you go, or you can work your round and then tie them. So long as you remember to tie them, it really doesn't matter. And keep going until your rug is the size you want and looks how you want it to look. And then we're going to think about a border. You don't have to put a border on your rug, but I do think it just finishes it off. So choose the yarn you want for your border and attach it the way we attached yarn all the way through this rug. Now you'll see I'm at the first stitch in a round. I definitely want to be doing it on a brand new round. So let's take a stitch marker out. And then make sure our yarn's not tangled with all our other ends that need weaving in. So the first thing we're going to do is go into that first stitch with a slip stitch. Okay, and it's where you just pull it through so that you've connected onto it. And then you're going to form a chain, and then we're going to skip a stitch and then do a single crochet. So put your hook through, pull the yarn through, wrap it round and pull it through, just like you've been doing for the rest of the rug. And now we're going to look at making the scallop by using double crochet. So wrap the yarn around the hook, skip a stitch, and then we're going to feed it in through the stitch, wrap the yarn around the hook and pull it through, wrap the yarn around the hook again, and then pull it through two of the loops that are on your hook, and then wrap the yarn around the hook again and pull it through the two loops that are left on your hook. Don't worry, we're doing this 3 times. So back into the same stitch. Remember, all 3 will be in the same stitch. So wrap your yarn around your hook and feed it through the same stitch. Wrap the yarn around the hook, pull it through the stitch. Wrap the yarn around the hook again and pull it through the first 2 stitches on the hook. If you have a little trouble with this, don't worry, you'll get into the routine of it. Then wrap the yarn around the hook again and pull it through the 2 remaining loops on the hook. So you'll see sometimes I'm having a bit of trouble because I've got this yarn that's quite lumpy from my t-shirts, but you get in your stride. Okay, so we've got 2 in there, we need another one. So wrap your yarn around the hook, back in through the same stitch, yarn around the hook and pull it through, yarn around the hook, pull it through 2 of the loops on the hook, then yarn around the hook again and through the 2 remaining loops. Just wiggle it through. Okay, and you've formed one of your little bunches of 3. Now if you want, you can put 4 or 5 in, or you could even use a treble crochet or even bigger stitches, get as fancy as you like. But then skip a stitch. We're always going to skip a stitch, and then we're going to do the single crochet. Just like you were doing before. And you can see that scallop just starting to form. We've gone out around those 3 and back down. And that's the pattern you're going to keep repeating all the way around. And as I said earlier, you can, if you want, use a larger stitch or more of the double crochets to make a more dramatic scalloped edge. So we're going to carry on, skip a stitch, and we're back into our 3 double crochets into 1 stitch. So I've kept this nice and slow so you can see me doing those double crochets again in case you're having any trouble with them. Okay, so that's in that stitch, and we're going to do another 2 in there. Don't worry, I'm not going to show you all the way around, especially not at this speed. I just want to make sure you're clear on how to do your double crochets and that your 3 or more, if you've chosen more, are going into that 1 stitch. So round the hook through the stitch, round the hook again, pull it through, round the hook through the first 2 loops, and then round the hook again and through the 2 remaining loops. And now you can really start to see that scallop appearing. All the way around there, dips in, out there. So then you're back to a single crochet, remembering to skip a stitch first, and a simple single crochet. And just keep repeating that pattern all the way around until you get back to where you started, and then we'll have to look at how to join onto our scallops. So you should be getting that nice rounded edge that's going to just finish off your rug nicely. Once you get all the way around and you're happy with it and it's lying flat and we've got no concerns, we're going to join back up to where we started, and I'm just going to show you how to do that now. So as you come back here, you can see that we've got that little space which we're expecting. So in through, take your yarn, hook round, pull it through, pull it through, pull it through. We're just doing our double crochets to make our final scalloped edge. So if you've already done this, that's fine, but I'm just finishing off this end so that you can see exactly how I joined on. So I've got my 3 in there, and now I'm back to where I started. So I'm literally going to go into that stitch pull it through all the way as a little slip stitch, and I've joined up. Now you may end on a single crochet depending how you started. It doesn't matter so long as your double crochets meet up with a single crochet, and then feed your yarn through the loop, and that'll just finish it off. And well done, you've crocheted a rug. But we may have quite a few ends that need something doing to them. So that's what I'm going to look at next. Make sure you're happy you've completed your rug. You're going to find all these ends that we need to weave in. Now if you've been weaving in ends before on your crocheting, you can skip ahead a little bit, but I will take the time just to show you crocheting ends in. Because I did say this would be a complete tutorial for beginners. And you're now looking at all those ends and thinking, oh my goodness, don't worry, they're really easy to deal with. You just want a blunt needle or a bodkin and thread one of your yarns through, and then you're going to feed your needle through several stitches on the back of your rug. Now sometimes it can be a bit tricky. I've found this t-shirt yarn can be a bit tricky because it's quite clingy. The stitches hold themselves closed, but persevere. And I recommend running through about 6 stitches. And if you run it through nice and tight through 6 stitches that are next to one another, you will find that your yarn has just disappeared. You can't see it. And then you're going to turn and come back. But before you come back, make sure you loop over a stitch so that it doesn't just pull back through. And again, you're going to go back through about 6. And it's just going to mean because you go all one way and loop over a stitch and come back, that it holds it nice and tight. If you're concerned, just go through a few more stitches. What you don't want is your end coming unravelled later and being a nuisance. It won't allow your rug to unravel because you've got your knots, but it will be annoying if you have lots of ends poking out. So once you're happy it's secure, you can see I'm working back on myself now. You simply cut your yarn off close to the rug, being careful, and that's it, it's disappeared. And you've just got to repeat that for all the rest. So just work steadily through them all, getting them all worked into your stitches until you have no ends left dangling. And then if you're happy with your rug, you could just use it. But if you think it needs blocking, flattening down and making sure it sits nicely, then I do recommend it. You do get a better finish. Now I'm using children's play blocks, which are just foam blocks. You can buy crocheting boards to do it on, or you can, if you've got a carpet, just pin it to your carpet. So what you're going to do is just pin it down flat into the shape you want and then spray it. So I recommend pin one end, it's literally one pin, then go opposite that pin, smooth it so it's how you want it, and pop a pin in. And this is very much a gradual process. So then I do the same to either side. Smooth across. And then start going in between those pins. And what you will find is as you do this, some of the pins you put in earlier you're not happy with. So you just sit and work your way around your circle and keep putting pins in, taking them out, putting them back in, and just basically making it so that it's how you want it to appear. It should be nice and flat and your stitches all looking nice and equal, and the rug how you imagined it being. So just persevere, and you can see mine slowly coming out as I'm getting those pins in and forming that shape. Take your time. You can see I'm taking some out and redoing them because I've realised they weren't quite right. And then once you've got them all in and you're happy with your rug, it's time to set it or block it in place. And all I'm going to do is spray mine with water. Now I'm just using an ordinary household spray that you use for your houseplants, and spray it all until it's all wet. Now we're not talking dripping wet, but it does need to be quite wet. otherwise it's not going to block properly. So give it a good spray. You can see what I'm doing here, making sure there's plenty. Have a feel, make sure it's properly wet and that it's all wet. I'm just making sure those edges are down. If you feel you need to, spray it a bit more. Maybe some of your edges didn't get sprayed fully. And then once you're happy, you just need to leave it to dry. Now I find I tend to need to leave mine overnight. If you're somewhere hot, may not need to leave it that long. Some of you may need to leave it longer. But you just leave it there until it's completely dry. So when you come back to it, check it is dry and don't set your pins out until it is. And then once it's dry, it's simply a case of carefully removing all those pins. And once you've got them out, you should have the rug you were hoping for. Now, if you're not happy with it, you can always reblock. I haven't mentioned steam blocking because that's for another day. I do recommend with the t-shirt yarn, the water blocking works really well. And then once you're happy, you've got your rug. So on the screen now, you're going to see two videos that are really helpful for you if you want to make your own yarn. So one's going to show you how to make your yarn out of t-shirts, and one's going to show them how to make your yarn out of fabric. So good luck making your own yarn, crocheting up your rug and getting a free rug. Great way to upcycle. Please subscribe and like if you've enjoyed this video, and hopefully I'll see you